Cameras are rolling. You got your coffee and everything?
No, I don't. I have tea.
You have tea this morning. I told you about my new coffee maker that brews coffee in like 8 minutes.
Yes.
I think the temperature of the coffee when it comes out is 120. Every morning I burn the tip of my tongue because I pour it and take a little sip. Everything I eat for the rest of the day is ruined. Ruined, Mike, I tell you.
Yes, but it woke you up.
Did it?
Well, that burn woke you up, yes.
Yeah. All right, here we go.
And now for something special. The unit is self-contained with its own saddler, farrier, wheelwright and so on. It's a rigorous training dished on who know all there is to know about horses, and it brings results.
We take you behind the scenes now to show just some of the interesting aspects of this training.
Welcome back to Equine Dynamics with Mike Stine, the #1 podcast to create sounder horses from the ground up. Mike Stine is a registered journeyman farrier with an APF1 accreditation. On this week's show, Chapter 7, Debbie's story out of the Proper Balance Movement written by Tony Gonzalez. Also, trimming of the horse foot for applying rocker shoes, a weird shoeing they've called it, and also making a hoof mold with a whole bunch of pictures that Mike Stine has brought us as well. And now's your chance to go over to YouTube. Make sure you like and subscribe over there. For every podcast we do, we have a matching video as well, and you can see all the visuals that we have here in the studio. And a very, very special visual of ours is over to my far inside is Mike Stine. How are you?
I'm doing good, Travis. How are you?
I'm doing all right. What have you been up to this past week or something? I see you on the table there. It looks like you brought me like a brain or something.
I did bring you a brain.
It looks like you got a brain on the table. We'll dive into what Mike actually brought here into the studio here in just a few minutes later on in the show. But, Mike, you drove up this morning. You parked your truck. You sit there on the phone. I don't know who you're talking to in the morning. And then you get out and you look at my pasture fence that's out there.
Right.
And you go, oh, my God, you put up a pasture fence. I go, Mike, that's been up for the last 2 weeks. Where have you been? You totally missed out on.
I was gone the last 2 weeks.
Well, it's up, as you guys know. But what we did add, what you probably did not see, was the hot wire now.
Nice.
So we have the hot wire on there because the reason why we're replacing the fence is because, of course, the horses lean and the grass is always greener on the other side. So they stick their head through the slats and they want to eat all the grass and do all.
They tear the fence down.
Yeah, and they push the fence all together. Pull that mic a little closer to you. There you go.
Hello.
There you go. And they're never satisfied for what they're walking on or whatever. Now, I was talking to a guy the other day. And he said he raised goats, and I want to know your opinion on this. And we were talking about hay and getting the round bales of hay because there's a guy up the road that sells big round bales of hay. Right. And he said that alfalfa is the most expensive one. It's got the most highest protein in it. This is what he's telling me. I don't know. I'm not taking this for word, but this is what he's telling me. He said, but you got one of those round bale holders, those big metal rings in your yard? He's like, you should buy a round bale and have the horses eat out of that. He said, the reason why, he said, I put a round bale out in my yard. My goats sit there and eat on it. He says when the hay hits the ground and the goats actually step on it, they won't eat it. So they waste so much hay. So you need to get like a round bale or a hay net or something to put around that.
Right.
Now, I know, of course, if the horse pees and poops on the hay, they're not going to eat it. But anytime we bring a round bale of hay over here, first thing the horses do is dive right into the center of that round bale.
Yes, exactly.
Have you had any experience with hay or what he says where if goats actually walk on hay that they won't eat it? That just seems weird to me.
Well, I have dealt with goats before, and goats, well, they're goats, and they do goat things, and that's that.
Now,
but yeah, they'll once they, even with the horses, once they walk it in the ground and scatter it and all that, but a lot of it they'll leave.
Now we're lucky enough where Dominique, our mare that's out there, only poops and pees in one spot all the time, whether it's in her stall, which is great for those that have to go out there and muck stalls all day long. But in the pasture, she will go behind the barn or behind the lean-to that I've got out there, and she will poop and pee behind that, and then that way she has a whole pasture. It's almost like she knows you don't crap where you eat type deal.
Right.
So But I've seen horses out there, ding-dong horses that will walk out there, they're eating and pooping out the same time that they're eating in the front end. You know what I'm saying?
Right, yes.
Eat a pellet, make a pellet.
Exactly. You got to, you're making room so you can eat more. You're eating more so you can make more room. That's how that works, right?
Vicious cycle. Keeps us alive.
Well, I got to say, today's first time I've seen the horses back in that paddock, right?
Well, back in this front pasture,
Right.
Yeah,
That's why it was a new thing.
Yeah, so we have them out there, and we have this hot wire out there, and you should have seen my wife and I putting this hot wire up.
Did you test it?
Well, my wife did.
Nice.
On one side, and I tested on the other side by accident. So we tie into one side of the fence, and we run it all the way down to the street and all the way across the front and then all the way back up. We use over 1,000 feet of hot wire, and we only put 2 lines up.
Right.
In between the slats. We didn't do 3 lines. We just did the 2 lines so they don't stick their head through it, and hopefully that'll keep them off the fence.
That should be sufficient.
So when we're going to hook it up, I'm sitting there and I make a little pigtail so I can actually tie into the existing hot line. Well, I'm working my hand through several different rails of fence because I'm on like this 4-corner area of the pastures where they all meet. And sure enough, Mike, my hand out there in the 98-degree weather, my arms glistening like a sweaty little, whatever.
Right.
Yeah, a sweaty little fish. And I stick my hand in there, and just that little bit of sweat was enough where I touched that wire, lit me up. And it's only 2,000 volts because we tested it. 2,000 volts. That'll move something. That'll make you move. Grown adult.
That's what's different about you. You have had shock therapy.
Can you tell by my hair?
Right.
It's all standing up now. But yeah, I got popped, and I'm like going, whoa! All right, the fence is alive. Because there's been times out there where Amy, to walk across the pasture, she'll do that where she squats, puts one leg, she'll do the squat and tuck and go underneath the 2 rails.
Right.
And she'll go through the 2 electric fence rails too. And she'll go into the pasture. Because the other pasture, we have 3 lines.
Right.
Just a wooden round pole and then the 3 rails all the way around, 3 power lines all the way. She'll duck, creep up under, shoulder up underneath it and go back up. I'm scared to. I just touched that little thing with one arm. Pop me good. I won't do that again.
You probably deserved it.
I say I won't do that again.
Now, does she unplug it when she does that, or
no? That's what I'm saying. I don't know if
she's non-conductive.
That, or it's just touching her clothes and it's not passing to her body. That's the only thing. So I don't know. If I do that, first of all, I can't get down that low to get in between the lower one and the middle rail. And second of all, knowing me, I'd be so paranoid if I got that low. I get the first leg through, get my body torso through there, my foot coming through, would get tangled up in it, and I'd fall on the ground, and then it's wrapped around my leg, and I'm out there screaming and hollering and crying.
Well, if you do that, let me get it over here with a video camera, so we'll have something.
Well, make sure you videotape me on that.
Right. We'll do good on this one.
We got enough cameras on the property. I'm sure someone would record it. One of our properties, or one of our cameras would record it here on the property, so that should be fun. So keep an eye out for that over on our TikTok channel as well. All right, guys, we got a lot to talk about, lots to get into, and Mike's going to describe what he's got here on this table. It looks like you made some kind of homemade ashtray. Remember you used to do that in junior high?
Yes.
In pottery class? That's what it looks like you got going on over there. And we'll dive into what that actually is when we come back. Stick around. You're listening to Equine Dynamics with Mike Stine. He'll be right back. Now I have to read. I'm so glad when the reading will be over.
Yes.
Oh, you need a cushion. I'd taken all the cushions out.
Took my cushions.
I don't know if it'll sit on that. See if it'll sit on that. Yeah, that's what I was worried about, that thing being all wobbly.
It's okay. It's your desk.
Yes, but it's my equipment, too.
That's right. So I'm not worried about it.
Boosh. Zzz. Show's over. See you later. Thanks for coming out. All right, you ready?
Yep.
All right, let me switch cameras here. Here we go. Make sure we're on the right camera.
There's a camera.
That looks like a good camera. All right, here we go. Welcome back to Equine Dynamics with Mike Stine. If you have a question for Mike Stine at any time, you can go to equinedynamics.com. At the top of the page says contact us. Fill out that little form. Make sure you put a return address. We'll send you out a little prize pack for being part of the show. Ask Mike a question, or if you just like to comment on the show at any time, you can do that over there as well. We'll read it here on the air. If you want to be anonymous, you can be anonymous as well. No problem at all. Just make sure you say that at the top of the page. And over to my far hand side, who is very much not anonymous, is Mike Stine. How are you?
Doing okay, Travis.
Are you still on the witness?
I'm still here.
Are you still on the witness protection program over there?
Probably.
All right. So now, go ahead.
What witnesses are we protecting?
I don't know. The horses. We'll witness the people watching me fall through that electric fence whenever it happens.
I'm planning on being here for that.
Okay. So we're going to talk about right now, Chapter 7 from the Proper Balance Movement, written by Tony Gonzalez. And Tony Gonzalez is one of your mentors that you had growing up. Unfortunately, we lost him in 2000. But during his time, he has come across a lot of different variances and a lot of different horses and a lot of different case studies. And this book is based on all the different case studies and everything that he has come across. And if you want to see this book, if you can find the book, it has been out of print for a while, but I'm sure you can find it in some of your used bookstores right there. It's called PBM, A Diary of Lameness, Proper Balance of Movement, A Gift for Your Horse, written by Tony Gonzalez, and that's Tony Gonzalez there on the back. So we've been reading now this whole season 6, we've been reading just little snippets and excerpts out of this book. And now we're going to talk about Chapter 7, which is Debbie's story. So Debbie's story goes like this. On Sunday, there was a phone call from Debbie. Her voice was filled with concern. Debbie had a very young horse that she's been training hard for dressage, and he was pretty good too. But the problem was, alarming to Debbie, was feeling that more than anything else, the performance of the horse was great. He would place and ribbons, but he had detected she had detected a movement problem. Debbie felt the young horse was going to become lame, and no one else could see what she was talking about. As she continued, I asked her to look at the horse. Debbie said, Debbie listed 2 vets. Oh, I asked her who had looked at the horse already. Debbie listed 2 vets and 3 trainers and a judge at the last horse show that she was in. The scores on the horse tests were good. The judge liked the horse and told her that she was overreacting about the horse. Now, as this continues, Tony approached the horse, and this is written in his narrative. So
right.
Tony says, I approached the horse and then suddenly realized that I have been so preoccupied with Debbie's concern, I completely forgotten the horse had no shoes on. So then he was expecting to, until then, I was expecting to arrive with a rather easy answer and decided that the proper type of shoes had to be used. So what did he come across when he was talking to Debbie and her horse that had no shoes on doing dressage training and doing well from what she was saying, telling Tony, doing well and getting good grades and marks. So what did he come across? This is Tony.
Well, if you go into the story, the horse, they check the horse over, and they're looking at the horse, and this is a lot of this stuff is early on in some of Tony's discoveries, and you'll find as things change, as we've discovered, figured out more and more and more, things have changed, and also with bringing in more body work and that sort of deal into the equation.
So as the story goes on, what was the problem that Debbie was feeling in the horse? What was the problem?
Well, Debbie, when she was in a turn, occasionally she would kind of lose the horse on the left shoulder when she was turning into the left.
Now, is this anything having to deal with what we were going through with Dominique? Because now she was a dressage horse, and we've kind of backed off on her training and stuff because she was having a problem. Is it a similar problem or totally different episodes?
Totally different episodes.
Okay.
And
so Debbie's horse.
So, basically she did okay. And it comes into learning how to look at a horse a little better. But, they watched the horse walk out. They watched the horse come back. And so, well, she walks out okay. Now they were looking at the horse's legs, right?
Yes.
At this time. The deal was that, she got her on the horse got her to put through the maneuvers, tried the horse out without the rider, did it with the rider, and then put her some maneuvers, and then apparently there was like one bad step that would show up when she made that particular turn. And, as the story goes, you got to wonder, is it the rider shifting when it just pops out that one time, which plays a bigger part of it than a lot of people want to believe. It's having the horse up or dropping the horse or whatever it may be, creating unevenness in the horse because the rider's uneven. So, she would go into the turn and she would kind of every now and then, it's like that left front leg would disappear, and Tony watched her, said, well, she's tripping when she hits the ground. Well, losing the front leg would start before the leg even hit the ground. So then they're scratching their heads, checking the horse out, and they said, well, he worked on the horse. They decided to shoe the horse, and the horse did better for a while. And all of a sudden, oh my God, something's going on in the back end.
No x-rays or anything were done? We were just doing the physically putting your hand to fur,
right,
and running it down the horse and examining that way for now.
It was a lot harder to get x-rays back when all this was going on because you were shooting film. If you shot film, you had to go somewhere and get them developed and get them back. We hadn't got instant x-rays like we've got these days.
Right.
And the availability of x-ray equipment was not as available as it is now.
I imagine back then it was like a huge, almost like the size of a soda machine.
Yeah.
It was so big and lunky and stuff.
Yeah, carrying a suitcase out there.
Right.
So, it was a lot of trouble to do them, and you got one shot. You didn't know if you had a good shot until you brought it back. With the digital, you can at least see right then, and hopefully somebody's paying attention to that. And we've had that discussion. But, going back, it's like, okay, there's something going on the back end. And the horse has a bit of a stifle problem. And then the more they looked at the horse, they said, the horse is uneven in the front end, sets low on that side, and sets low on the hip on the left side, and it's kind of jacked up in the right side and sore in the stifle. Okay, then it's like, well, we raise up the right side or the left side, and that's where a lot of people think. But on the other end, a horse with a sore stifle probably is not getting enough flexion in that leg. Okay, and if you create flexion in the leg, then the hips will square up. If you're looking at the way the feet are aimed on the ground, if you rotate in and rotate out, and you're doing diagonal pressures in the hoof, then the hips will square up. And, I've learned more and more and more to go straight to the back end of a horse because any horse that is uneven in the front end will be uneven in the back. Also, with a horse like this, if you're watching them walk out, if you just pay attention to the barrel, this is something that has been paid attention to, brought Ray Morris's work into it and all that. But if you just watch the barrel swing, if a horse is dropped on one side, front and back, and you watch the horse, the barrel swings and they walk, right?
Yes.
Okay. Your barrel swings when you walk.
I was going to say mine swings more to the left when I walk because I've got a bad right hip.
Right, exactly. So if the horse is dropped on one side, their body curves. It can't not curve. The back will not be straight. I'll say this. I mean, it's very subtle. And people say, well, no, my horse is back straight. Well, when they walk out and you watch that barrel swing, if the barrel's dipped to the left and it has swinging, it will swing out to the right.
Can you look at the mane as well? Would that get?
Well, the mane plays a part in it because typically the mane will fall into the low shoulder or the weak shoulder. And, horses have a weak side, strong side, just like we do. Some of them will be more diagonal as far as high-low, as far as what elevation. Some of them will be more diagonal, and this one would be more diagonal as far as left side's low, right side's high. And so then you got your straightened out hind leg that's got stifle problems. We create flexion in that hind leg and start picking them up off the front end and get it coming through, and then the body will straighten out some because then the horse is moving out more evenly when it moves forward, and then you get that shoulder on the front end moving more like it should.
Now, Ray said that he noticed in this story, in Debbie's story, that he noticed that the horse had no shoes on.
Right.
Now
well, Tony did.
Oh, I'm sorry, Tony. And
Ray would have noticed it too.
Everyone would have noticed it, except for
Right.
me. But Tony noticed that the horse had no shoes on. Now, this is a common practice for dressage horses not to have shoes on.
At times, yes.
But in this situation, because of the issue
Dealing with a mechanical issue, yeah.
that he wanted to put shoes on, and I'm assuming.
Yeah.
And what type of shoe was he putting on, or what was he doing as far as to fix Debbie's horse?
Well, at that time, Tony was playing with a lot of pad work to even out the body. But at this point, I rarely, if ever, use any pad work to get one to even out. It's dealing with, what can I do? It's like Jack Miller used to say, we can provide support and we can reduce leverage. Where do we provide support? Where do we reduce leverage? He said, that's about the only thing a farrier can really do. It's just understanding where. And some of that goes back to the trim. And the more fine-tuned and the more we start playing with pressure in the hoof, the more horses will even out just from getting better with how we prep a hoof and giving them a little time. A pad is a quick fix. The problem sometimes is you end up with some compression problems because they can't get away from the pressure. So I pretty much never put a pad on a horse anymore to even them out. Do they even out? Yes. But it's playing with, how I set brake over, how am I, do the feet match exactly? Do I prep left and right identical, which is a habit that people, because they want to see feet, everything's got to be the same on both sides. Well, the problem is the horse sitting the same on both sides. And then you got to work with each individual and treat each individual as an individual. And the bigger relationship you need to learn to deal with is your left front to right hind, right front to left hind when you're dealing with diagonal working horses.
So Debbie's story continues and it says, Debbie agreed to let me shoe the horse's front feet, so I put 3 degrees of pads on the left front. After that, the knees were almost level. I could see my confidence growing. Then I trimmed the hind feet, so it was time to test this theory.
Right.
Debbie remounted the horse and rode him around for me. Two separate were now reacting as the change of a positive manner. The rider could also definitely feel the difference. But this is years ago, so he was doing pads back then, and now he's gotten away from it.
Well, yeah, at this point, he'd gotten away from it later in the career.
Right.
And, the thing of it is you got to, when you start looking at the body, and this is more like Ray Morris, but when you got that, quote, short leg with the high knee, you got to start looking at what's going on in the shoulder angulation. If they've collapsed that shoulder over, it creates pressure and it stands the pastern up. If the pastern is the same length, cannon bones are the same length, that raises the knee up because of the position of the shoulder. And a lot of that can come out of how are they working in the back end. If you get the shoulder to release and move, that situation can change.
Now,
and it's not you're changing. It's posture. It's posture. People say, well, you can't change a horse's conformation. Well, we can have bad posture. We can have good posture. We can lose movement range because we hadn't stretched out. And in time, you can work at regaining movement range, and you can work at regaining better posture for us as a human and us as a rider, and the same thing happened with a horse.
Tony goes on to say about a disabled car and the underlying cause of a disabled car. He uses that analogy. Do you know what he's talking about in that analogy?
A disabled car with a flat tire.
Right.
And the way the bumper tilts. And if the bumper, flat tire is on the back of the car and you come up on the front, well, that whole car is going to be cocked because it's got a flat tire in the back end and the suspension is giving. When you put a new tire on the car straightens itself out and it's sitting more even, right?
Right.
Well, it's not that different with a horse. When you get the leg that's an issue working more correctly, the whole body will try to straighten itself out. But they're compensating with 3 other legs if they got one leg that's a bit of a problem. So it's a lot easier for them to transfer weight to 3 other places in the body and hide it. Some of it is shifting the barrel. Some of it is what they do with the shoulder position. Some of it is how much flexion they're using in the leg or not. Has a shoulder collapsed? If this has gone on a long time, you've got muscle atrophy from not being used. You've got a shoulder that's been pulled under. and kind of folded up and not being used because the body's turned, and for it to move straight, you've got an odd movement pattern if you look at left to right, and you look at the development of left to right. Well, if you get the body to start straightening itself out, that left to right muscling in the shoulders will start straightening itself out, and then that whole shoulder, as it gets strong, will open out.
I just picture a horse in his mind. We were talking about how smart and how not dumb, but how naive some horses are. This is where I picture a horse walking in this situation. Step, 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 ow. Step, 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 ow. Step, 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 ow. And when I do the ow, my whole body jerks to the left-hand side.
Exactly.
Step, 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 ow. Step, 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 ow.
Right.
Now, he's not saying ow. His body's saying ow.
His body's saying ow, ow. And if you start looking at how he's twisting his pelvis, how he's doing this, how he's, people, I look at horses regularly and people say, well, this has just happened. He hasn't been doing this long. He's been moved so good up until the last week or two. And you go out and look at a horse and there's a huge discrepancy in muscling from one side to the other. Okay. He's not been moving. He just got uneven. No, he hadn't. He's been uneven for a while. It's been coming at you. You just hadn't noticed. If the horse had been moving very even and using itself very evenly up until the last week or two, we would have muscle that was very similar from left to right. If, it's like all of a sudden your left hand got weak, or right hand, or whatever you pick up, do 12 ounce curls with.
Right, my boxing hand.
Right. You only do 12 ounce curls with one side, and it's like, oh my God, look what happened to the arm I'm not using. Right?
Yes. What's the scene from Blazing Saddles? Look at his hand, steady as a rock. He's like, yeah, but I shoot with this one.
Exactly. So the difference in the hand, or your 12 ounce curl arm and the other arm, has been coming for some time, maybe years. You've been working on 12 ounce curls on the one side, but not the other side.
My other one's been like pushing things, get there, pushing the horse
So
around.
the muscle development is going to be different from left to right.
All right, guys, stick around. When we come back, we'll dive into what's so weird about putting rocker shoes on a horse. And Mike's got a little story to talk about that. Stick around. You're listening to Equine Dynamics with Mike Stine. He'll be right back. Rocker shoe arms. You drawing now?
Well, it will be used not too long out.
Okay. I think I have to flip that over. Let's see. No. You leave it just like that. You're going to mess up the whole show, Mike. Mm-hmm. There. There you go. I don't know why it flipped last time. I had it right the first time. All right.
I'm going to draw another one here.
You ready?
Yeah.
Okay. Welcome back to Equine Dynamics with Mike Stine. Make sure you follow him over.
Leave this off for a minute.
What?
Go ahead.
Welcome back to Equine Dynamics with Mike Stine. Make sure you follow him on YouTube, because for every podcast we do, we have a matching video. You can see Mike drawing over there. He's doing a crazy little squirrel.
Tic-tac-toe.
Yeah, crazy little squirrel pictures over there. And make sure you like and subscribe over there. And you can see all the visuals that we have going on here in the studio. And if you have a question for Mike Stine, go over to equinedynamics.com. Also, don't forget, Mike Stine's got a brand new Facebook page out there. It's his business page now, all geared towards the podcast and everything. So he's taken all of his personal stuff down, and now he's just strictly doing the podcast on his Facebook page, and he's got a bunch of articles. Make sure you like and subscribe. Search for Equine Dynamics Mike Stine as well. And over to my far hand side, I don't have to search too far. That is Mike Stine. How are you?
I'm doing good, Travis. How are you doing?
Doing good. Now, we were talking about, last segment, we were talking about muscle movement and stuff. Now, something that my wife is going through right now, she is getting ready to train for, I don't know, she's got all these...
Marathon.
No, well, kind of, sort of. She's got me scanning all these cards for dressage, all the different patterns for different levels and everything like that. Now, something that she's training now, because we have a new horse, Diego, he's 4 years old, gelding.
I bet he likes eating.
He does. They all like eating. But my wife she's gotten so used to sitting in a saddle a certain way, moving her body a certain way. Now that she's trying, Brett Ingram, the trainer, is teaching her to, now she's got to take her right side leg, hip up higher behind her to get the horse to move in a certain direction. So I'm going to stand up here real quick. So if you're watching this on the video, so this whole side of my wife's leg, because it's going up, back, and higher now, she's training those muscles more than training the horse, so the horse will react it. She's trying to build those muscles in her legs so she can transfer that energy to the horse.
Have you kind of broke her into some of your ballet training from the past?
Yeah. Put a little tutu on.
Yeah.
Follow me, babe. Now, Mike, you can follow Mike over on YouTube, and you can see this picture right now that we're drawing. So what are you drawing there? Let me switch to camera 3 so we can all see it.
Well,
that looks like 2 teepees.
2 teepees. Yes, it is 2 teepees. It's a couple of very, very crude feet.
Okay.
There's been always a lot of discussion, but somebody brought something to me about.
Give me that peanut butter sandwich out of the way.
Here's your peanut butter sandwich.
Thank you. All right, now we can all see it without being distracted.
I could do something else to distract you.
All right, what are we looking at?
They're rough hoof drawings with a coffin bone in it.
Okay.
And the whole rocker shoe deal, that's one of those deals, if you don't know what you're doing, have not been through a lot of training, a lot of experience, you don't need to go there because you can make a mess.
Now, you said someone came up to you and said rocker arms are weird, or rocker
shoes, that's just weird shoeing. And I was like, it's some new thing that nobody understands. And actually where this started was finding it at archaeological digs. Dr. Eden's first indicator of it was he's on a list for archaeological digs, as he had told me some time back, where people call him and ask him about things, and that's one of those things that had appeared. The first ones I recall him talking about were in some small remote area in South America over about a 50-year period. And he said some old blacksmith, and this was like 500 years ago, some old blacksmith was trying to keep horses sound, donkeys sound, whatever he was doing, work animals. He didn't have x-rays back then, but he had to keep them working because they had to work. And it's like there have been similar things found in digs, other parts of the world, other time periods, and all that. You know, Bernie Chapman, when he was working with the heart bar shoe, everybody said, well, he invented the heart bar shoe. And Bernie told me, he said, I invented the use of the heart bar shoe. Somebody had done that back to the Romans and Greeks, but we didn't know what they were doing. And like Clyde Caldwell always told me, he said, we're trying to learn how to shoe horses again, and we're researching it because for years, the apprentice learned from the master. They became the master. Their apprentices learned from them, right?
Correct.
There weren't books written. And, you know, if you had a trick, you didn't let the other one know. Now, Clyde was on up in years when I was in my 20s. He said when he was a kid, they plowed with mules. They didn't have any money, but he couldn't let the local guy do the mules. There was a guy 5 miles down the road, and he didn't like it because he had to ride the mules to the guy 5 miles down the road and ride them back because the problem was his dad knew if they had a lot of hock rotation, they were going to fall apart. And the guy 5 miles down the road, when he did the mules for them to plow what they were plowing, the mules' hocks didn't rotate. And when you got a plow hook behind one, you're walking behind a mule, you got a lot of time to watch your back end. Part of the problem nowadays is we sit on top of them unless you're driving, which is very few. And there's a couple of people out there that are pulling horses. If you're driving, you're constantly looking at the back end. If we're riding a horse, we're constantly looking at the front end. So we kind of forget about the back end. So that's another rant. But the whole rocker shoe concept goes back in history a lot further than people know. It's not an easy thing to learn how to do. And the whys of it. And, you know, to get it to work out in a positive way for a horse. And there's no, you know, when people get a hold of a new idea, oh, this is a cure-all, but there is no cure-all.
So what is the reason why you would use a rocker shoe? Why and when and what is its benefits?
Well, this is why I did these little quick drawings down here. if you've got a horse with a negative PA, you've got no sole depth, you've got a lot of compression problems. And I can change this quickly. Now, part of the problem we've run into with wedging horses is so many times you bring them up and you've got the wedge there, and they will, it's a flat surface, and they compress back into the wedge. You've got, as Doc Redden calls it, you got the air wedge built in there, so they're not compressing down. This is probably closer to a normal hoof. A little bit of a positive distance between the back of the coffin bone and the ground, as opposed to this foot that would be a negative PA. When they're talking about the PA, they're talking about the palmar angle, which is the angle between the bottom of the coffin bone and the ground, correct?
Correct.
Okay. And there's a little write-up in the American Farrier's Journal, last one, about Sammy Pittman. And we had Jarrett on the show, and Sammy's one of the ones involved with the dried leg specimens. So he did an article for the Journal about applying rocker shoes. Okay, on this bottom foot, on this top foot, I may not have to do anything like that. I might be able to put a nice little break over, get him where he comes through happy, and I keep this guy happy enough and working like that. And he's probably got a decent back on him. Back's not dropped. Where this really comes in is horses that have dropped backs or weak backs, to me.
Back of the hoof, not
back of the horse.
Oh, the back of the horse.
Back of the horse. If everything is collapsing, they try to shove everything down on the ground. If I've got a horse that has a strong back, you can do not much, and they'll try to pick it up and carry it through. If I got a horse that's weak in the back and a rider's driving him down in the middle, this becomes a more difficult deal. But, if I've got no sole depth, you don't want to make the sole too thin. The other thing is, like the wing of the coffin bone back here, you don't want to get into that. So you'll bring the back of the foot back to the widest point of the frog. You'll get a good solid base, and we'll come under here, and at this point, we'll bring it in and to kind of even out what we got through the middle. And when a horse loads, I want him to pick forward. If I put a rocker on him and it's set right dead center of the foot, he'll want to tip backwards, and then I'm actually creating some strange strains. And that's one place where people get in trouble. And you can create a real crushing effect. If I bring my belly more in here, and it's going to vary from an upright foot to a low slung foot. Like if I've got a clubby foot, I decide to go in that direction with. It's a completely different deal. And if you look at some of these rocker shoes, they are built with more of a belly here, so the shoe itself may come something like that.
So the rocker shoe basically is just an extension of the way you've trimmed the horse's hoof,
right,
to continue that movement all the way through the whole pattern of the hoof.
Now, you think about this when you're doing a rocker shoe. I want him rolling across clean, like your tire. If I've got it, and if I've taken him, I've picked him up to this kind of a ground angle, I don't want him dead-ended against the ground there. I don't want him to come in like the back of that toe. Sometimes if you forge it out, you'll get a little dip there and stop. If I got him rolling and I stop, just slam on brakes, I just created a lot of leverage on against that flexor tendon. And part of what we're doing here is getting some of the pressure off the flexor tendon. So if you got a laminated course, you're putting less stress here. And the other thing is down force here. And if you hit the brakes on it, you just created down force here in a different angle. And if you pitch it up way high on that kind of angle, you almost try to use the foot like a little bit like a splitting wedge. So you want it to roll across clean. It's like you're rolling your tire down your driveway, and somebody throws a rock out there. What's happens? Tries to stop, right? Yeah. So you want him to come in and roll across it. And I want this set at a place where on your really low slung feet, when I put pressure on it, it'll pick it up a couple degrees. I don't want him to go up and set dead on the toe. I want him to catch him on balance. That way he can actually do some adjusting to his own angle. Just like, okay, when we're padding the high-low horses and put lift pads under them, they're locked in a position. They're not locked in a position. A wedge, they're locked into a position.
Now, okay.
And with wedging a horse, if you don't do something to break up, but there's a big difference. If I put a wedge on this foot just for say, and I bring it all the way out here, and I've got pressure against that foot, or I forge out the front of the toe, and I bring the brake over back in here, that's a totally different deal. That much will make a difference on how much pressure tendon. You may be sitting at the same angle, but your crowbar length just shortened a bit. That's working against that tendon and against the hoof capsule.
Now, I've seen you brought rocker shoes here in the studio before on past different seasons.
I've rockered shoes on your wife's horse because of mechanical problems we were dealing. I'm not saying every horse needs to go in a rocker, because they certainly don't. My competitive event horses are not in rockers.
But the rocker shoes are made out of aluminum, are they not?
Some are made of aluminum, some are made of steel, some I forge out.
When I look at them, and this is just me being the simpleton, when I look at a horse with rocker shoes on, I look at them almost like roller skates or skis, because I always think that the horse, as soon as it's going to put its foot down, I feel it's going to go whoop, 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 and his legs are going to slip out from underneath him. But no, that's not the case because of the angle and the pressure.
Well, you would.
I would, yes, I would.
And something you got to understand, which was a discussion that was brought up last night, is, why don't horses do this and do that and fall over and everything else? I had some very aggressive rockers put on a horse for a young vet to keep the horse sound, and she sent me pictures of the horse going across a prelim jump a week later. I was like, oh, good Lord, why did you do that? Well, it felt good and I wanted to go. And I'm like, okay, the horse the horse needs some time to adjust. And this can make a huge difference in what's going on with that shoulder movement. And I've also had people say, well, you can't do rockers in the back end because you can't stabilize the lateral movement. And then that comes into, do I float a heel? Do I leave a heel? Do I float a toe quarter? Because that's where a lot of your diagonal rotation comes from.
So Diego right now has rocker shoes on the front or back or all four?
Diego's only shot on the back end.
Okay. And are those going to be a permanent fixture to Diego, or is this to build those muscles and then eventually he will go back to a different shoe?
Diego, we have changed shoes as we've gone, and it's always in flux. It's always changing. He's a young horse. The problem is he wants to go a little straight in the back end, and he's trying to push that palmar angle down. So mechanically, we're trying to get ahead of that before we're dealing with check ligament damage and all that sort of deal.
Okay.
Because when the check ligament is stretched or torn, the resting point of that cough bone becomes, instead of here at this good angle, it becomes here when it's relaxed and sitting on the check ligament. At least that's the way I see it today.
The only thing I heard was preventing damage further. And I was like, okay, that's all I need to hear.
I'm not saying that we have any real damage there, but if we can, since it's going in training, honestly, if this horse lived in the mountains and he was constantly up and down mountains, it'd be a totally different deal. We probably wouldn't be putting the rocker back on him, Mike, because he'd have to use his body more.
Mike, if I lived in the mountains, I'd be a totally different person than living down here in Charlotte, North Carolina.
Yes, you would.
I'd had long beard and probably one of those jugs with 4 X's on it.
Right, and then you'd have a bigger difference because you're doing curls with the jug, right?
Yeah, that's right. All right, guys, stick around. When we come back, Mike brought me a pink bowl that I'm going to put some soup in, and he's going to describe why I can't put soup in this bowl. So stick around.
Because it's got a leak in it.
It does. So stick around. You'll see Equine Dynamics with Mike Stine. He'll be right back.
Right. I need peanut butter on this, too, because that's one that was made in a mold that was Doc Redden. And I sent you a picture of a shoe that Doc had fit up to it because he was involved in this horse. We were working back and forth long distance on it.
All right, hold on. There's no synchronized numbers on here, so we'll just have to kind of thumb through them.
Right. We can just thumb through them, yeah.
Okay.
That's good.
You ready?
Yes. Yes, I am.
Okay.
Let me get this out of the way. Horses jumping around and running.
Put your cap back on that, or it'll dry it off.
I would love to.
You need a flashlight? I think there's a flashlight.
There it is.
You got it?
No, that wasn't a cap. That was your pet cockroach.
Yeah.
It was running. Want me to rattle around and make some more noise for you?
We're not recording. Well, at least on the video we're recording, but.
Because I can make a bunch of noise.
Bam. Okay.
Yes.
You ready?
Yes, I am.
Why is this open? I don't need this open. Please don't mess up. Okay. Welcome back to Equine Dynamics with Mike Stine. If you'd like Mike Stine to perform a clinic out at your location, or if you'd like Equine Dynamics, the podcast, to do a show at your location as well, all this information can be found over at equinedynamics.com. At the top of the page says clinics. Fill out that little form. We'll pencil you in. Tell us what you want. If you'd like me and Mike to come out here and do a live broadcast from your location, we can do that. If you'd like Mike Stine to perform a clinic at your location, he can do that as well, and my feelings will not be hurt right away, but they will be hurt eventually.
We'll hurt your feelings.
I know.
That's what you're here for.
And over to my far hand side, my emotional support farrier is Mike Stine. How are you?
I'm doing good, Travis. How are you? You got a sad life of your emotional support.
Right. All right. So speaking of emotional support, we're going to switch to camera 6 here. And
That's elbow support.
And we're going to look at Mike's elbow here in this. And don't forget, for every podcast we do, we have a matching video over on YouTube. Search Equine Dynamics Mike Stine. Make sure you subscribe to him over there. And he just wants to share all of his information. You can see all these videos in real time as we're talking about them here on the program. Always furthering education. Now, Mike, looks like you got a big old piece of Hubba Bubba bubble gum on this horse's foot.
I do.
So how many pieces of gum is that on that horse's foot?
I had to chew a whole lot of gum. It's about 20 packs.
Your jaw must have been tired.
That's okay. I'm used to it.
So what do you got going on here? And tell us why you're doing it and what you're doing.
Okay, this is a horse that I was working back and forth with Doc Redden in Kentucky on. He'd worked on the horse. The horse is at home. We were chasing a few issues at the moment and trying to decide to go with where to go as far as just adjustments. And so Doc wanted the foot. He wanted to put his hands on the foot, right?
Right. So he physically wanted to put the hands on the foot, and the way you had to do that was physically get a mold. Now, do you think in the future, now we're talking about how x-rays were like these biggest, huge as vending machines,
right,
are now the size of this tablet that I have here on the studio here. Do you think 3D printers are going to be the next new wave where they can take a picture of the horse's foot and
print it out
and 3D print that out? Do you think that's going to be the new wave?
I think that is coming, yes.
Okay, so you are already on that path.
And I think that you can take x-rays and the foot, and with the tech that's out there now, place the coffin mold in the foot too, probably. I'm not a techie person. I've got a techie hammer.
Okay, so with this techie hammer that you have in your hand right here, what do we? Let me switch to the next picture so we can.
Yeah.
All right, so here's the next picture. So it looks, it's a grinder that you got going on.
No, actually, that's a little bit of heat.
Okay.
Because I want to cure out that impression material. That is an impression material that came from Nanrick, and it comes in pink and it comes in gray.
So my question is, you've got this whole entire hoof encapsulated in this pink material.
Right.
How do you get the hoof out of that? Is it pliable?
I'll show you.
Okay.
Yes, it is pliable.
So it dries almost like a nice rubber or something.
It is a rubber.
Like a silicone.
It's a two-part rubber.
Okay.
And what we're doing is, and most of the time I end up doing these by myself, so I end up using way too much impression material because in the middle of it, I can't put the foot down and start mixing more, so I do like whole cans.
Okay.
Which is way more than what is needed. If you had two sets of hands, somebody could be working the impression material into flat pads. You can start adding on and working it together, wrap the foot up. It would probably set up quicker in thinner layers, and then get it off. And there it is. It's off, right?
It is off.
And what it did was split it right down the middle of the back. There is a little bit of a place where I sliced through it with a knife down the middle of the shoe and out the back.
Okay.
Right?
I don't know.
Well, it is.
Okay. I'll take your word for it.
And then we just kind of tape it together so it doesn't break apart. Doc wants the foot. We send him the foot.
So you got this mold of this horse's foot. Now, first of all, why are we molding the foot?
Because Doc has his own ideas, and he's got the x-rays that we've sent to him. Mm-hmm. And Doc wants to tweak how he wants the horse shod, correct?
Okay.
And he wants to fit up a shoe for the horse and adjust the trim on the horse. So it goes to him, and guess what?
What?
You just saw it.
Oh, is that it right there?
There is the foot. That's the foot. We did both feet. That's the way he wanted the shoes done.
Now these are the molds. Now here in the studio, you've got molds here on the table.
Right.
Hold on, Mike. Getting ahead of me right here. Let's see. Here. What do you got there?
This is that mold.
Okay.
This is the problem foot.
Okay.
And
kind of rotate it around so everyone can see. There you go. All the different angles.
It's ugly, right?
Yeah.
And he's drawn out where the shoe wants to place. If you saw where he drew the line in there with the shoe, correct?
Oops. I got to go back to this one.
We're going far away.
Multitasking here. So
right.
Here we go.
There's the arrow. There's where he wants the shoe set.
Mm-hmm.
And then if you go forward, there's a front pick view of it.
Okay, let's go forward for front view.
Right. And the toe is a problem, so we're floating the toe off of the shoe. And if you see the nails on either side, what we're doing is bringing the nails up and curling them over and sliding the foot into it. And then we're putting super fast over the nails to the sides of the foot. So it's not nailed to the foot itself. It's stuck on there. And then we can use some impression material underneath. But he said, this is how I want this horse done. And then we run some super fast and make a band across the front. And that's his pattern for how he wanted the super fast done, because he wanted it. That's why Doc wanted it.
So you did a mold of the shoe, of the hoof,
and sent it to Doc,
and you mailed it to him just like that.
Right.
He drew on it.
Right. Just like this. This is way too much material. Again, I could have done 2 of them, but this is a hoof model. And what you would do is bring it up over. You really want to bring it up onto this is not going to burn them.
There you go.
But you want to bring it up the leg, up over the top of the top of the hoof, so you can actually see where the bulbs of your heels are going in and all that sort of deal as you do the leg. And you can pour it that deep if you want it or not. But you do that. We split it down the middle. We take the hoof out, and then
Hold on, Mike. Hold on. You're getting off camera here, so hold on. There we go. Now we can. Now show the split.
the split down the middle.
Okay.
And then it's going to be stuck back together. Now, these things, if they sit a long time, they will shrink a little bit.
Okay.
But see, it's nice and rubbery, right?
It feels like caulking around my window.
Yeah, except it is a lot tougher than the caulking around your window.
Mm-hmm.
And then you mix a two-part, and you can add, I know you was adding some shavings in there because the price of this is so high, and it gets really hard. And I don't think this one had shavings in it, but I think now a lot of times Doc, if he has a bag of shavings nearby, he's mixing shavings in with the fill to give it some body and soften it up some. Because if the material's using here, if you're going to trim it, you need to trim it before it sets up. If you mix a lot of shavings in there, you can come back here and you can trim it.
So that just looks like plaster of Paris.
Oh, it's not. It's definitely, if you feel it, it's tough.
It's like concrete.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then he's got he's got the X-ray, he's got the foot, and then if he wants to, and I've done this myself, working with other people, and then you can fit the shoe and put it in a box and send it to them, and they can apply it, and you've got the actual foot with you. So that's what making molds of feet, and we've talked about this a little bit before in past shows, but this is a little more. This is how it's done.
So the turnaround for you to get this to Doc did his drawings and everything on it and got it back to you, and
right.
and actually with the horse and applied the shoe based on his recommendation. How long was that whole time frame?
4 or 5 days.
Okay, so it takes a little bit less than a week to do this.
Well, you can do. I mean, if you really want to do it faster, we can do we can ship it overnight, and he can ship something back overnight.
Okay.
And you can get it down to about overnight, get it, do something in the shop, drop it in the mail, get it overnight, and you can have it in 3 days.
Still, you're looking at about 4 days because it's going to take you a day for you to do it, mail it, wait for it to harden.
Well, if you do it in the morning, you can mail it that day.
Oh, okay.
And if he gets it in the morning, he can have it back out in the mail the day he gets it. Yeah,
you're still looking at about 3 or 4 days.
Right.
That's still a long time. As to like technology improves and stuff, this is where I'm going with the 3D printers.
Right. It could be printed on site, basically, with a 3D printer. Problem is, I don't know if we can 3D print the shoe.
No, the shoe you would have to use just your whole steel.
But you could basically email it to him, and the printer would print it out for him on his end, as far as the foot, right?
The times they are changing, Mike.
Yeah. So that is a useful tool occasionally when you need when you're working back and forth with other people in other parts of the country. The last time I made something and sent it was to someone in California that I was involved. They sent me stuff. I sent them something back to put on their horse.
So the question I have is, was it accurate enough for him to, when you got the mold back and all the lines that Doc Redding put on there, was it accurate enough to where you went word for word, verbatim, what he wrote on there, and you put the shoe on there, you put it on the horse, and the horse went, yay, that's better for me?
Yes, we got the horse happy pretty quick. Now, when it comes to trimming the live foot, it's going to be a little different than trimming this mold. But he understands that. But can this get us real close in the ballpark to the point we don't have to do very much, and we can make them happy? Yes. Yeah, we sure can. Now you may have to adjust some on what the texture of the foot gives you when you start working on it, because that's lost in this. If you could take the foot and just actually drop it in the mail and send it to him and send it back, stick it back on the horse, that'd be,
Hence the 3D printers.
Yeah.
All right, guys, stick around. When we come back, we'll wrap up the show and let you get back to enjoying your ponies. Stick around. You're listening to Equine Dynamics with Mike Stine. He'll be right back. Oh, it just seems like, for me, Mike, and I'm trying to wrap my brain around it. For me, there's just too many variables to go wrong.
There's a lot of variables to go wrong.
Yeah.
There's a lot of variables to go wrong every time I get out of my truck and walk in a barn.
I know. I just think that I'm glad it works. I know there's a process. I know that people on
this is not an everyday thing. This is a way out on the edge thing.
But people on both ends need to know exactly what the other side is doing. You just can't have me go, hey, take a mold of Diego's foot, and I don't know what I'm doing.
No. And, the only place I would be involved with doing that is, like, the people that work with Doc, train with Doc. Mm-hmm. First time I rolled in Doc's driveway was 1990. And been through a lot of further education. I've watched the changes, just like working with Tony when you go further back and see where he was and where he ended up, following the changes and trying to continue on with that. And we're always changing our thoughts a little bit. Hopefully next year I'm doing something a little bit different than I do right now.
I know that you put that on the horse's foot with the hoof being on the ground or off the ground.
Right.
Is there any way for you to create almost like a shoe box and fill it with a material and then wait for a certain time and then wait for kind of like the Chinese man theater where you put your hands in the concrete and then pull it out? Is there a method of taking the horse's foot and putting it in that mold and then pulling it out instead of, you holding and packing and trying to get all the air pockets out of it rather than, I don't know. Is there a way to do that?
We got to take them to the Chinese theater. Right. There might be. You may have just figured something out for us.
I mean, for me, I think that would be more accurate as far as,
right.
Pour the thing in there and it still be somewhat pliable. You put the horse's foot in it and then it automatically self-levels. You wait a second, dries, and then you pull the thing off and then cut it, however you need to get the horse's foot on. I don't know. Just throwing it out there. 3D printers need to hurry up.
Right.
All right, you ready?
Yes, sir.
What did we learn today?
We learned...
Wait, hold on. We're not there yet.
What did we learn today?
I got to bring you back in.
Okay.
Ready? Welcome back to Equine Dynamics with Mike Stine. Make sure you follow him on YouTube. Search Equine Dynamics, Mike Stine. Also, don't forget his new Facebook page. Make sure you like and subscribe to him over there. You can see all the different things, all the different articles that Mike posts up there. He posts a lot of educational stuff. He doesn't post sandwiches, pictures, or anything like that. It's all business. It's all about horses over there. No, don't post any pictures of your sandwich.
What about my hot sauce?
And, you can put your hot sauce up there as well. We got fans that like the hot sauce. And also, over to my far right side is Mike Stine. How are you?
I'm doing good. I'm doing good.
I actually dried some of my peppers from the garden, and I'm going to make a hot, like a spicy rub for
nice.
for a brisket. So I'll give you some of that here.
Okay.
Once I get that done.
You want my recipes? I don't have any. I just threw stuff together.
Yeah. No, I'll stick with mine, Mike. I appreciate that. Horseshoes all day long, I'll ask you. Recipes, I might pass on that one. All right, guys. So what do we learn today? Chapter 7, Debbie's story, From the Proper Balance of Movement by Tony Gonzalez. And this is Debbie, who had a horse, a dressage horse, and was getting good marks and grades and stuff, but she noticed that the horse wasn't pulling right when she came out of a turn, and turned it over to Tony Gonzalez. And what was his reaction to that?
Sometimes they don't corner like they should.
Right.
Yeah, there are so many times when you're looking at a horse where you end up, if somebody gets so focused on one point that they forget what's going on somewhere else. And I had a little incident the other week with that where someone was looking at a back foot that had a damage in the coronary band, where if you let the foot get long there, it'll crack open. They kept obsessing about the horse being lame on that foot. And with the person sitting there, it walked up. The horse had put his front leg in something and sliced the bulb of his heel on the medial side on the same side. It's like, no, it's this foot because of that crack. I'm like, it has nothing to do with the bulb of the heel being sliced open. But there's so many times when you can't pin one down, you're chasing ghosts, and you get so focused on one point that we do not take it in the big picture. We always need to take in the big picture. Cause and effects.
Forest in the trees, right?
Right.
Also, when trimming a foot for rocker shoes, why do people think that rocker shoes are a weird form of shoeing?
They don't understand. And
I'm hopefully, and the videos and stuff that we posted here, hopefully it'll give someone a little bit more.
We've got so many preconceived ideas we've developed, and if it doesn't fit our preconceived idea, it's not right. But there's stuff being unearthed around the world at different times that is like, you got to sit back and look. And if it showed up here 500 years ago, and it showed up here 1,000 years ago, and then this group did it here, and then the Mongols may have done something. I don't know what they did, and you get some similarities at different time periods in different parts of the world. This one wasn't communicating with this one, wouldn't communicate directly with this one, unless we don't understand what kind of internet they were using at that point.
Smoke signals.
Yeah, and so if it continued on for some time, why were they doing it? And we're still trying to figure some of those things out now. Someone
knew something somewhere that we did not know.
They didn't have all the technology we've got necessarily, but they knew they had to keep a good horse working, and a good horse doing its job, whether it be for war or for work or the family car.
And the rocker shoe, you said, it's rare, but you do have to use it sometimes.
I do use it sometimes. If you're going in that direction, you need to work with somebody who has some serious training. Just like anything, farriers should always be educating themselves and getting better, and don't get stuck in one thing.
And also making the hoof mold, and the pictures that I have here, and I'll switch back to camera 3 so we can see all 3 different stages of Mike's hoof mold over there. So you've got the actual bubblegum thing there,
right?
The mold. You've got the actual shoe that came back from Doc Redding after he put his marks and stuff on it. And you do this to get his professional opinion, just to cast a mold of a foot, send it off, and then he can physically have it in his hand and shape and mold it the way he needs the horseshoe to fit on.
Right. And you need to pour this fairly quick, because this stuff over time, as it cures out, will shrink some. And then you won't have the same mold, but it'll take some time to do it. But within a few days, this thing needs to be poured.
But until they can get the 3D printer to work 100% at an economical way,
right?
I mentioned something about having during the break, having like a shoe box and pouring like you see an expanding foam. You pour it in there, let it sit for a second, let the horse step on it, let it self-level around the horse's foot, and then, kind of pop the horse's foot out of that.
That's your next project.
I'm not doing that. Someone out there can take that idea and run with it. The only thing I want is 10%. That's all I ask for. Just 10% of whatever your gross income profit is.
Okay. That's all right. Yeah, that'll probably work.
Mike says he wants at least 3% of that 10. So We'll work on that. We'll work on the contract after this.
Yeah.
All right, guys, on that note, we're going to let you get back to enjoying your ponies. Don't forget to follow Mike Stine over on Facebook. That's Equine Dynamics Mike Stine. Also follow him on YouTube. And if you have a question for Mike Stine, go to equinedynamics.com. At the top of the page says contact us. Make sure you put a return address if you'd like to comment about the show or ask Mike Stine a question. We'll read it here on the air, and we'll send you out a little prize pack as well. On behalf of Mike Stine over there,
Thank you. Have a good day. Have a good one, Travis, and work on that mold.
my name is Travis saying see you next week.
Hey, Lucky.
Good night, Ned.
Hey, Dusty.
Good night, Ned.
Good night, Ned.